Is tariffs, question to you as an economist, is tariffs a useful, effective tool for global trade?
No. I think that there is a real problem in global trading system and globalization in general that is not going to be resolved by tariffs. We do need to think about more harmony between countries, where, let's say, not one country dominates. And here I'd push back on China and say, yes, you have amazing companies and competitive companies, but you just can't dominate in everything. That would not be good for global harmony. You need to give other countries an opportunity. You need to develop your own internal economy, right? Rely on your consumers as part of the deal. Tariffs, this kind of highly protectionist method, is very distortionary, and it's going to be bad for the US. I'd actually argue that both China and the US have totally taken advantage and also enjoyed the global economic realm under the US liberal order. I think that China quite likes it, actually. You know, U.S. kept peace, and during this peaceful times, things were working very well economically, technologically. They kept the sea lanes open. They did their part to preserve peace to the extent they can, I guess. But China wants peace, right? Only with peace can they do what they can. And actually, U.S., despite saying they've been victimized, look, they've had a very, very good time. Right? Never have quality of life, standards of living, technology risen as much as the U.S. did under its own liberal order than it has ever before. And the amount of influence and power. Yes, of course, you can blame the U.S. for lots of things that happened, but it actually had a really good time, and China as well. So now they're going to take this apart. They think that they're going to be somehow better off, that American people and Chinese people are going to be better off under a more disorderly, fragmented, rule of a jungle kind of world. That's an illusion. That's what politicians tell their people, but that's not the truth.
So what are, if not tariffs, ways to incentivize countries like the United States to build internally? So to build semiconductor chips internally, for example.
Well, exactly. Tariffs is a way to punish foreigners, but what you really want to do is to strengthen your own domestic competitiveness. And I want to draw an analogy to the US-Japan competition in the 1980s. Japan actually took over in many parts of the semiconductors industry, even though the microchip was invented in the US. But guess what happened? Well, it actually drove more competition and more mobilization in the US, actually creating this innovation system, changed a few really critical laws that helped with US innovation, and the consumers benefited. The US took over again as the leader of the semiconductors industry. There's no better way than to strengthen yourself to be competitive. Because ultimately, tariffs have not done anything to help the U.S. The trade deficits have widened since Trump, right? They haven't closed the imbalance with China and with the rest of the world, because ultimately the U.S. saves less than it invests, and that's a macro phenomenon. It's not a trade phenomenon. But I fear that the U.S., by kind of dropping off of this global trading network and system, it will lose more and more of its power. You have power when you're deeply engaged and embedded with a country. Once you've left it, you actually lose any sort of leverage.
So there's got to be ways to incentivize industrial policy, building more stuff internally without tariffs, right? So you just invest from a federal perspective. You've invest in companies, maybe like more carrot towards the domestic versus stick versus the foreigner.
All kinds of subsidies that are justified for the green transition, for innovation, R&D, support for the university system. You know, the US is the world leader in terms of attracting talent, it has everything going for it. But it was a little bit complacent, and by dropping off of that global network, it's going to do itself more disservice.
Yeah, tariffs don't quite make sense to me, or maybe I'm dumb, but it just doesn't make...
It doesn't make sense to economists either, and economists are not all dumb.